Okay, everyone, we are going to look at the first key topic of Weimar and Nazi Germany. So we're going to look at how it all begins. Firstly, we need to know that after the First World War, Germany had been fighting for 4 years. The war was ended in November of 1918. Germany was fighting against the Allies, which is Britain, France, and the USA. Although Britain had won battles, the soldiers were tired, but still quite confident. What happened next? At home, unrest grew, strikes, protests, and revolts broke out. The German Revolution began, and the Kaiser abdicated. A new government was put together with the president Friedrich Ebert. He became the first leader of the Weimar Republic, and he quickly signed an armistice to end the war. Lots of people saw this as a surrender, however, and, well, it started lots of problems. Consequences of World War I for Germany. Army, 2 million German troops dead, 4 million wounded, 55% of all men were casualties. Government, the war was expensive. Germany was 150 billion marks in debt. Amongst the public, there was a lack of food because the British ships were blockading food ships. 750,000 at home died from hunger. It led to unrest and protests by the public. For example, in Munich, workers went on strike. They were led by a Jewish communist. Some of the German Navy refused to follow orders in Hamburg. Factory workers went on strike. Soldiers refused to control the demonstrations or the strikes. The Germans wanted something better. The Weimar Republic, a new start. It was set up quickly to stop a communist takeover. Ebert was the leader of the SPD, a moderate party, and he became the chancellor. The aim was stability, not extreme change. What did Ebert do? He made a deal with the army to keep the communists out. He replaced extreme politicians in the Reichstag with moderates. He called for a new democratic constitution, no monarchy, no king, no Kaiser. It helped to avoid anarchy in Germany. The armistice was the formal end to World War I. Germany signed the Treaty of Versailles, admitting defeat and guilt. This would cause major problems for the Weimar Republic later. How did Ebert keep control after the revolution? Well, he let the king's civil servants keep their jobs because they kind of knew how to run things. He had to work with soldiers and workers' councils to keep schools running, used their experience and prevented unrest. He signed a deal with the army. He promised not to reform them, and he signed this with General Groener, who promised that the army would support Weimar. Avoids a conflict, reduces a chance for another revolution. Ebert promises no government takeover of businesses to keep the rich industrial owners happy and keep them loyal. Ebert had a weak control, but it was enough to create a new set of rules of how Weimar Germany should be governed. This set of rules is called a constitution. After November of 1918, Germany was run by the Council of People's Representatives, but it was only temporary and was soon replaced by the National Assembly. Strengths of the Weimar Constitution, the new Weimar government. It was democratic. All adults, men and women, could vote. Anyone over 21 could vote. It was a fair system. Even small parties got seats. Chancellor's power was limited. He needed support from two-thirds of the Reichstag to keep his job. It was balanced. The president was elected every 7 years, so he couldn't stay in there and be a dictator for life. Laws had to be approved, so the Reichstag had to vote on it, and local control. There were regional governments to make, and councils and things to make local decisions. But it had weaknesses. Proportional representations meant weak governments. No party had a majority. There were loads and loads of different party members there, and they were all squabbling and arguing. They couldn't decide on anything. Coalitions, when they got together to try and form a government, they collapsed often because they had different ideas. Slow to make decisions. Everyone had to agree. So in an emergency, it couldn't happen. President had too much power. He could use something called Article 48 to rule without the Reichstag. In an emergency, he could make all the decisions. So it's kind of not really that democratic. People lost faith in democracy. They wanted a strong leader like the Kaiser. It didn't have full support. Lots of the army leaders and the people didn't like it, didn't like democracy. They weren't used to it. And it was opposed by extremes. The communists on the left hated it, wanted to destroy it, and the nationalists on the right and the Nazis, when they exist, totally reject it. So how was Germany punished, and how did this cause a problem? Well, Germany and Ebert signed the armistice, but why? They had no other choice. They ran out of money, they ran out of troops. There were protests and riots in all major towns in Germany that they weren't keeping control of. America had now joined in, the Germans were being pushed back, and the Kaiser had run away. So no one's in control. The Treaty of Versailles made Germany feel defeated, humiliated, and weak. The German people felt their government betrayed them by accepting the harsh terms of the treaty. This led to lots of anger and frustration amongst the people. So they believed that the treaty unfairly blamed them for the war and made their country suffer. What was it then? A set of rules given to Germany as a punishment for the First World War. Britain, France, and the USA decided on the punishments. Germany weren't even allowed in to take part in a discussion. It's called the Treaty of Versailles because it took place in the Palace of Versailles in the Hall of Mirrors near Paris. Big clauses then. Number one, the war guilt clause. Germany had to say they were to blame for starting the war. This made many Germans angry because they didn't think that they were the only ones at fault. Once they signed it, it meant that the Allies could punish them for anything because they'd admitted their guilt. Reparations, £6.6 billion to pay back for the damage caused in the war. This was particularly tough because Germany was pretty broke already after fighting a war. Armed forces, limited to 100,000 soldiers. They couldn't have tanks, submarines, or planes. Lots of soldiers were then out of work. Germany felt couldn't defend itself properly. Loss of industry. Germany lost important coal and oil resources, which hurt the economy. They also lost jobs as factories closed or moved to other countries. So they had lots of the places where they made money, coal fields, industry, taken away from them. They lost loads of land, about 10% of their population. Some Germans were now living in other countries like France or Poland. This caused great anger for the Germans. They lost all of their empire. They believed it was a diktat, a dictated peace. They were just told they had to accept it. And they also believed it was a Dolchstoß, a stab in the back. They can't believe their army had beaten, and they think the politicians have stabbed them in the back by surrendering. It's not true, but that's what they thought. Challenges to the Weimar Republic from the right-wing and left-wing political parties. Well, I'm going to let you have a pause of this one and look at it for yourself, okay? Okay, let's look at some more specific challenges. Spartacist revolt. Left-wingers, the German Communist Party, included a group called the Spartacist League, led by Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. They got money and support from Russia, 40,000 members, and they published 33 newspapers. Wow. What happened next? In January of 1919, Ebert sacked the police chief of Berlin, who was very popular with the workers. Thousands of workers protested. The Spartacist League called for a strike. 100,000 workers demonstrated, took over government newspaper. The Weimar government couldn't keep full control. How did they react? Ebert sent in the Freikorps, right-wing ex-soldiers who easily stopped the demonstrations. The leaders were arrested and shot by Freikorps officers. Next challenge comes from the Freikorps themselves. The Freikorps don't actually like the Weimar Republic either. They just joined in to help because they hated communists. After World War I, many ex-soldiers in Germany kept their weapons and formed Freikorps groups. By March of 1919, there were 250,000 of them. They hated communists and helped to stop them, but they became too strong. In March of 1920, Ebert tried to reduce the size of the Freikorps to 5,000. But they marched into Berlin. They wanted Wolfgang Kapp to take control and bring back the Kaiser. Ebert asked the workers for help, and they went on strike, stopping the city. Without support, Kapp was arrested. The workers disliked Ebert, but hated the right wing even more. So the Kapp putsch helped the government because they hate the Freikorps helped the government get rid of the Spartacists because they hate them more than the government. And then the workers, practically, the left-wingers, helped to get rid of the Kapp putsch and the Freikorps because they hate them more than the government. So it's not exactly a vote of confidence for the government, is it? Political assassinations, loads of these, 376 assassinations of left-wing or centrist politicians. Right-wing killers never punished because the judges were biased on their side. 10 left-wing assassins were sentenced. It showed that even judges worked against the Weimar Republic. Fifth challenge, armed guards at political meetings. Basically, political parties got their own bodyguards or their own armies. Meant to be perfection, for protection, but they often caused violence. Hyperinflation, two more challenges. Hyperinflation and the French occupation of the Ruhr. Germany was bankrupt after World War One. They spent too much money, no gold left. The Treaty of Versailles made them pay reparations. They lost land and they had to send coal to France. By 1923, Germany couldn't send any more coal, so France sent troops to the Ruhr. The French took the coal, they took machinery, they brought their own workers in. How did the Germans react? They went on strike. The government avoided violence because the army was weak, but the Germans were angry. They wanted to fight back. How did it affect Germany? They lost 80% of their coal, iron, and steel from the Ruhr. It led to more debt and it led to more unemployment, a huge shortage of goods, and real anger because they felt their government were weak in not allowing them to fight the French. Hyperinflation. Prices went up because there were hardly any goods but massive demand. Germany's economic problems. They've got to pay war debts and reparations. They lost their factories due to land loss. There was high unemployment. There's no tax money coming in for the government, so they don't get any cash either. Even fewer goods because France took over the Ruhr. The Germans had to pay more for everyday things. How did the government react? Badly. They made bad decisions. They printed more money, making it almost worthless. Effects of hyperinflation, life became impossible. People carried money in wheelbarrows. Workers were paid twice a day as money lost value fast. Some shops refused to take money and swapped goods instead. Lots more theft because people couldn't afford things. Other countries refused to trade with Germany because the money was worthless, made food and other goods even harder to get, so people are hungry. Rich and middle class suffer. Their savings become worthless. Everyone blames the Weimar government. Who benefits? Well, foreign visitors, because they got cheap holidays and could buy loads with their money. Germans hated this. How does Gustav Stresemann help Weimar recovery after 1923? Three reasons: the Rentenmark, the Dawes Plan, and the Young Plan. Need to learn these. So Rentenmark, a new government-owned bank, a new currency, got rid of all the old worthless money. The new money was trusted because it was backed by German industries and banks, and it allowed foreign trade again. Dawes Plan. Germany couldn't pay reparations, so Charles Dawes helped Stresemann make a new plan. Reparations were reduced to $50 million a year, and the US banks loaned Germany $25 billion to help its industries. This is good because the Allies were happy, Germany could pay them. Strikes in the Ruhr ended, so the French left. Germany's factories produced twice as much, more jobs, more trade, more money for the government. Good times. Negative effects, well, the extreme politicians were angry because Germany was still paying reparations and they saw it as surrendering. And some Germans disliked relying on American loans as it made Germany's recovery dependent on another nation. Young Plan. Stresemann negotiated again with America. The debt was reduced from 6.6 billion to 2 billion. Germany got 59 more years to pay, making yearly payments smaller. This is good. Lower payments, lower taxes for Germans. You don't need to get so much out of them. It meant more people have got more money to spend. The German people had more money. It helped boost the economy and industry. The French agreed to leave the Rhineland, which was good, seen as a big win. Increased confidence, reduction in payments and other changes made Germans feel hopeful and confident about the future. Strong support, 85% of the population voted to support the Young Plan. Negatives, well, anger again from people like the Nazis. Said they were passing the penalty on to the unborn. They would have to pay this bill for years and years and years. And the payments are still quite high. Locarno Pact. Stresemann signed an agreement with Britain, Belgium, Italy, and France. For the first time, Germany had been allowed to play a part in a foreign agreement. Stresemann was even awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So the positive consequences of Locarno, they basically agree a new border with France. They promise they're not going to invade again. It means that people trust Germany, they start talking to Germany, not ignoring them, which helps things. Negatives, the Nazis are really angry because they want to reclaim all the land lost at Versailles and don't want to guarantee the western borders. They kind of still want to attack France. League of Nations, this was like a club of powerful countries, and Germany wasn't allowed in. But Stresemann manages to negotiate the position where Germany not only is allowed in, that they become one of the most important nations in the League of Nations structure. Brings back their sort of their kudos. People respect them more and they feel good about it. So that's a positive. Negatives, of course, is that the Nazis don't want Germany to make connections with other countries, so they attack them. Kellogg-Briand Pact. This was a deal whereby Germany promises, with 61 other countries, not to use war ever again to achieve their foreign policy goals. This improves Germany's reputation. It shows that they're becoming more respectable. There's more support for this and less support for extreme political parties. All the Kellogg-Briand Pact is that countries promise they're not going to use war to solve problems. The most important part is the fact that Germany is asked if they'd like to sign it, not told to sign it, so it shows that they're making a comeback. They're respected again. More key events. Ebert dies. He's replaced with a former army commander, Paul von Hindenburg. His previous career itself gave Germany a strong leader. In October of 1929, Strassmann had a heart attack and died. Oh dear. So it's bad to lose Strassmann, but it's good that Hindenburg is now the president because he's an ex-army general. So all the people that wanted a strong army leader, they're kind of going to be happy with this. Living standards for German workers. Of course, the standards suffered after World War I, but they improved slowly as the economy improved. Lots of the improvements were paid for by the Weimar government, which kind of made it popular. Work. After World War I, loads of people lost their jobs. By 1926, however, 2 million people were unemployed. Things got better by 1928. Emotional impact. People who gained a job because of Strassmann and the loans gave people pride, gave people money, which was important. Unemployment insurance. Workers paid a small part of their wages for insurance. It helped them to get money if they were sick or lost a job, made them like the Weimar Republic. Housing. Huge housing shortage after World War I. The government helped build 37,000 new homes. In Berlin gets 10,000 new homes. So large building projects make Germans feel their country was recovering. They're being looked after. Education. Huge growth in students going to university because now it shows that they're confident that they have a future and there's a point in them going, which is great. Wages. Workers had shorter hours, they earn more money. Wages went up by a quarter. Workers were now happy that the government's helping them. They've got money to spend. Ex-soldiers were given pensions. War widows, people that had lost their husbands in the war, were given pensions, and so were some of the parents of fallen soldiers. This felt like a reward. It gave soldiers dignity and made people believe the government cared. Why didn't everyone experience these improvements? Lots of middle-class people and wealthy people lost their savings due to hyperinflation. They had to start over. They didn't get anything out of this. They did not get their savings back. So they kind of thought the Weimar government was helping the lower orders in society, but not really helping them. Women's lives. How did things change for women during the Weimar Republic? The Weimar government believed that in return for hard work during the war, women should be able to have more equality. Some traditional Germans disagreed and thought that they should be at home being housewives, but lots of Germans actually agreed to more equality. Changes took place. Women were seen as independent, with money to spend in the movies, magazines, and advertising. Political change. The Weimar government, led by the Social Democrats, strongly believed women should be given the vote, so they were. 90% of all women voted in Weimar elections. By 1932, 112 women had been elected into the Reichstag and 10% were now female. Equal equalities for women in Weimar Germany. Equal rights. Women had the same rights as men. Marriage equality. Husbands and wives were equals. Jobs and education. Women could work in any profession and go to university. Challenges, traditional beliefs. Many still thought women should stay at home. Employers still preferred to hire men. Women could vote and hold office, but few had real power. The law gave women more freedom, but society was slow to accept the change. Women had more opportunities, but still faced barriers. Advertising and film. The rise of the new woman influenced advertising, magazines, and films. It made the lifestyle more popular and accepted in German society. Lifestyle of the new woman. Most were young, unmarried, working women in cities. They used their own money for clothes, social outings, and personal freedom. They were raised to be independent during wartime, had short hair, wore makeup, and revealing clothes. They smoked and drank alcohol. They went out alone without a husband or father, less focused on marriage and children, embraced a more liberal attitude towards relationships. Due to World War One, 75% of women were in work, often doing men's jobs. It dropped after the war to 35%, which was the same as before the war. Positives: with more shops open during the economic recovery, women could have part-time work in shops and offices, meaning they could have time with their family too. There was progress in medicine, where there were 2,500 more female doctors. Negatives: even though the law said women should be treated as equals, often they were not, as attitudes were slow to change. Women were paid 30% less than men for the same work. They were still expected to give up work when they were married. Few women were able to enter high-status jobs, and many traditional attitudes remained with the older generation. So many women got new freedom. Some found it difficult. Some men accepted the changes, but others feared that women would challenge men's power. Women felt they were helping Germany's economy after the war. Some men thought they were just taking jobs from men. Cultural changes, as well as significant changes to women's lives. There was an exciting change in areas like music, art, literature, and cinema. Just like women became liberated from the traditions of the past, artists, musicians, filmmakers, and architects also experimented greatly. Of course, this wasn't supported by everyone in Germany. Why did culture change? Less restriction. Under the Kaiser, life was strict and formal. After he left, people felt freer. But the new Weimar government gave people more freedom, like free speech, and freedom of creation, like art that says what they wanted to say. The economy: more government money for the arts. Artists could make a living and reach bigger audiences. The USA's roaring 20s inspired German filmmakers and jazz musicians. And technology: new media, new tech helped filmmakers try new styles and special effects. So this is what you get: new objectivity, people being more honest in their art about what real life looks like, showing poverty, not pretty and romantic views. Modernism: futuristic, taking a pride in industry and technology. Expressionism: emotion, fantasy, and feelings of artists, not just showing objects like they really look. The Bauhaus movement was a design college in Berlin, and their slogan was technology and art. So you can imagine what that's like. Painters like Otto Dix and George Grosz painted scenes from real German life, which were critical. For example, deprivation, German nightlife, ugly suffering of German war veterans. Cinema: film was popular all over the world in the 20s, but the German films were more experimental, innovative, and often controversial. The Weimar government funded, gave money for this. Literature: a number of writers began publishing work. The historical novel All Quiet on the Western Front criticized the war and was turned into a famous film. And because of freedom of speech, they could do this. There was opposition, however. Many older people and the church and extreme political parties didn't like the new cultural changes. Right-wing Nazi Party wanted traditional art that celebrated Germany's history, while the left-wing communists thought spending money on the arts was a waste and should be used to help the poor. Okay, that was a whistle-stop tour of the first key topic. This is going on YouTube, and underneath you will find a knowledge organizer that looks at the entire of the German topic to help you. You'll also find a checklist, a revision checklist to use as you go through each of the 4 topics. And you will find some A3 revision sheets as well that you can use to fill in as you revise, a bit like revision clocks, only a bit more detail. So as you go through this PowerPoint, download the A3 sheet below or collect one from me in school, and you can use it to help you. Okay, best of luck.